This episode of History Saver is brought to you by Addressing Gettysburg. Addressing Gettysburg is a podcast that shares great experiences, quality programs, awesome guests, and is a welcoming community for all who love Gettysburg. So join in with host Matt Callery and find out why Addressing Gettysburg is one of the top-rated podcasts online today. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, right here on YouTube. So check out Addressing Gettysburg today, where history is not boring. Thank you to Addressing Gettysburg for sponsoring this video.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
So Fort Gibson is constructed, and I thought that was a snake. Holy shit. So Fort Gibson was constructed here in around So with the Trail of Tears, the United States government saw need to start kicking up some fortifications here in Oklahoma. Well, today we're at probably one of the most famous and the biggest. This is Fort Gibson in Fort Gibson, Oklahoma, just outside of Muskogee. Let's check it out as we continue our History Across America series. So Fort Gibson, where I am today, it was the southernmost outpost in the American West. It was built around 1824, and it was here to serve as a protection during the time of the Louisiana Purchase and in this new territory. So Fort Gibson is constructed here around 1824. Now this is a time whenever this was the American frontier. This was the American West. And as part of the Louisiana Purchase and all of this other stuff going on in the time frame, well, this was a much needed fortification, and it was the one that was the most furthest west, and it was huge. And Fort Gibson is going to stand here as a beacon of defense for the next 50 years. So this is what you see as you walk into Fort Gibson, and it says it's open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. to check in with the front office, but that front office looks locked to me, and all of the buildings look locked. So there's some that's open. We'll check them out as we can. So 1824, you have a guy by the name of Colonel Arbuckle who is going to come into this fortification from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Is going to establish this place as the westernly fort in the United States, the most western fort to protect the Louisiana Purchase area that's just been purchased by the United States. And this is a part of a series of fortifications that butt up against that line for defense. But there's going to be stockades built here, barracks built here, just numerous outbuildings, federal government type facilities for the Army and other things are going to be right here in Fort Gibson. But its major claim to fame is also going to come in the form of a surgeon. The surgeon that was here is the earliest known person to record Oklahoma meteorology data, and that is in 1824. But his most biggest claim to fame is one of the darkest periods of our history in America, and that comes in the form of the Trail of Tears. Now, you've got several indigenous people that are coming along as this fort is situated on the Arkansas River. They're coming into Oklahoma, which has been set aside. General Andrew Jackson has sent all of these indigenous people from the east out to Oklahoma. He's trying to get rid of them. And, well, they come into this Oklahoma on land that's set aside for them. Well, in Oklahoma, this is home to the Osage Nation. Now, the Osage, as you can imagine, being here since the 17th century, are not very happy about this crap. They are, just thinking to themselves at this point in history, what is going on? We don't want them here. This is our land. The federal government's already impeded on them. Now they're bringing in tribes from the east who they don't know, and they're not getting along with very well. Well, the Cherokees start begging for protection, and well, they give it to them. But a lot of the Cherokees, the Creeks, the Choctaws, the Seminoles, all of these indigenous tribes coming from the east, a lot of them, including the Cherokees mainly, come in this area of Fort Gibson. And this is going to be kind of their intake. Think of it like a prison. Okay? Women, children, men, thousands of them filing into this little space of Fort Gibson. They don't know what's going on. They've been removed from their homes, moved to an Indian territory they know nothing about, and they don't know whether they're going to live or die. The army begins giving them diseases. A lot of these people have never been exposed to some of the things carried by the white settlers who's here. So they begin getting sick. A lot of them are dying. And this place is going to serve as an intake. This is going to also be a big provision settlement. So that's a little bit of the history behind this place. And I gotta say, just thinking about what happened here during the Trail of Tears, personally, with me and my background and my personal life, this is not a place I'm very fond of. But it's a big part of history. I mean, a lot happened here, and just walking here, imagining the women, the children, and the men that come through here and then suffered so much. It's pretty intense. But let's take a look at Fort Gibson and see some of the buildings that's here, and there may be some original structures still around. So this is the depiction of an enlisted barracks. Not much to it. A log fortification, wooden stockade here, but this place is pretty neat. I mean, they have it built up to look exactly what it would have looked like. And I gotta say, this is one of the neatest forts I've been in. Runs hand in hand with Fort Stanwix in New York. Here's some more enlisted barracks here, and you can even see the roof here is compiled historically authentic. And yeah, this would be a cool house to live in. Well, there's my truck out there. But as we're walking through, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the history here and what happens after the Native American removal during the Trail of Tears as they come into Oklahoma. We're going to fast forward to the American Civil War. You're going to have a guy by the name of Blunt, and this is going to be named after him for a little bit, but Blunt is going to come in, and he is going to be the guy with the federal army who, with the help of some federal and unionist Native American home guard militias, are going to go into battle. You've got a conflict called the Trail of Blood on Ice, which is a little known conflict during the American Civil War in 1861 that's going to kick off. And in 1863, fast forwarding, you are going to see the Battle of Honey Springs at July, and it's going to be from this fortification where those troops are going to set off and go to Honey Springs, which we will see in an upcoming video, and they're going to fight at Honey Springs because the Confederate Army and the Confederate Native American Home Guard units and militia are going to be trying to close in on this fortification to attack it and, well, take it over, which would give them control of the American West and the Indian territories. So yeah, there's some Civil War history for you, and this is going to serve here as a post for the United States Army until Reconstruction, and a number of years after Reconstruction is finally going to be abandoned, and then 1930s is turned over as a historic site. So here's another look at some of the enlisted quarters. There is a ton of these. This is a squad room interpretation, which is pretty neat. Not much bigger. Pretty cool. There's a wood stove. Yeah, it looks like a surgical table more than anything else. So the fortification itself isn't very big, but there's a lot to it. There's an upstairs room, but we can't go up there, obviously. But you can see these barracks are 2 stories, and there's some really cool pictures of these early on in history. And as we make our way around, it's just a lot of enlisted barracks. So another small structure here. And this is going to be, I guess, the ammunition and powder storage room. And this is a original building, I do believe. Pretty neat. And inside, well, you can see all the powder bags, buckshot, musket balls, cartridges, bayonets. Pretty neat structure. So, and it's pretty much the same all the way around. There's not really a whole lot of difference here, other than there have been some storerooms, provision rooms, different things here, and mainly it was a large housing of troops. And you could see one field artillery piece here, which we're going to go take a look at, and before we get out of here and head to the next place. So they do have a really neat artillery piece here, and appears to be a Civil War era reproduction cannon. As you can see, there are no stamps along the barrel, so I do believe this is reproduction, but a working model on the carriage, and pretty well protected as well. So they have a really neat Civil War cannon here. Appears to be reproduction, but nevertheless, it's always cool to see an artillery piece. And well, that's just about the gist of it here inside, but there's a few other structures I do want to take a look at before we leave Fort Gibson. So of course, they're going to have stockades here, and this is going to serve, well, some pretty dark purposes, and not just for the soldiers that are stationed here. So yeah, it's a reminder of a bunch of different things that may have happened here. Let's see, this is the jail fortification stockade. So they do have these, and yeah, you can see the ball and chains on the floor. Another reminder of some of the harsh punishments here. As we continue on, we've got, well, not sure what this room is. Let's see what we have down here. This is a light cell for less serious offenders. You would get minimal lighting in this room, just enough to make you think about what you did. This is the guard room we're coming up on, where the guards would be here that were guarding the prisoners in the stockade. Another guard house here. This is more of the room where they would carry out administration duties. You may be made to wear a sign that says thief or deserter. And this wasn't just used for military. This was also used at that point during the Trail of Tears time for Native Americans as well. It wasn't treated very well. And then we've got more enlisted quarters. So a lot of enlisted quarters all the way around. And this is Fort Gibson. So there are a few more structures outside of the fortification here we're going to take a look at before we get out of here. But I gotta tell you, it's just a heavy feeling being here, knowing what happened here in history. It's yeah, it's a heavy feeling. So we come through here a minute ago, but I happened to miss this. I don't know how, but this is the blockhouse of the fortification. You've seen these before on the channel from some other locations, but this is the east blockhouse. This would have been one of the main defensive structures here in the fort, and there would have been loopholes inside and up top. You can see the ladder there going up top. So yeah, pretty cool. So let's make our way outside of the fortification, check out a few things before we get out of here. So we're exiting the fortification, and as you can see, there were several other structures here outside of the fort. There's a chimney in the distance, and then some things out here as well. A parade ground type. Looks like there may have been a building or guarding or something there. And I'm guessing Fort Gibson also extended some into the fields past his house here. And there is another structure there. All of these are closed for some off-the-wall reason today, even though online it says they're open. But see, some of these are remaining structures from the 1840s or foundations of some of the original fortification structures that were here. It's pretty neat to see these. Now, as I make my way back to my vehicle, right outside of the fort, you have the Henry Clay Meigs house. Honestly, I'm not really for sure what that home would have been, but obviously it had some kind of historical importance here. But this is what the outside of the fortification here at Fort Gibson looks like. Pretty neat place to come. I know they do stuff here every once in a while, but I don't know why there's no one here today. Yeah, it beats me, but still pretty cool to see this place. The first commercial telephone long-distance telephone line in Oklahoma was placed here in 1886. Huh. Pretty cool. And then here's a monument for Fort Gibson, placed here in 1963. And one more monument right here. Talking about Fort Gibson, this was placed here in 1935 to 36, is that duplicate of the original. Franklin D. Roosevelt, President of the United States. All right, so this is Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. We are going to continue our trek with our History Across America series that's going on. And where's the next place going to be? Well, we'll leave that for you to have some suspense over, but it's going to be a good one. So with that being said, guys, thank you for watching, and we've enjoyed our trip here to Fort Gibson. So if you're ever out this way, come by, pay it a visit. Let's continue down the road. Until then, keep preserving history. Stay safe.